Hi folks, hope you're all good. This is another video about democratic reform in the UK, though this might apply to lots of other countries too. So this video is very similar to, I think, two different videos I did before in the past. I'll post some links to them. And what I'm doing here is a kind of compromise proposal. It's not my favorite idea, which would be direct democracy, but this is more of a compromise, as I say, where I think the powers that be and the people today might like this idea and take it on. So let me try and explain the system. So there's quite a big overlap, as I said, to ones I've said in previous videos, but it's different in some respects. Okay, so what I'm proposing is basically the UK, for electing the government, changes the system to an online voting system, and also the system would have online voting for the actual lawmakers. So when the politicians actually, like what they do in Parliament at the moment, they would do that online, and they wouldn't actually have to go to a certain building to cast votes for like proposing laws and voting for or against new laws. So the election system would be as follows. Each one of us would online be able to put the political parties in the national parties in preference order, and different to now, where you could just cast this vote anytime. You wouldn't have to, there wouldn't be actually be an election day or an election in particular. We'd all be able to we'd all have at any one time, we would have our preference order online. Well, maybe scratching there. Let's say every month there would be an election, basically. They would take the results that were currently the case, and they would do an instant runoff election. I've explained this in the other videos, but to briefly recap, an instant runoff election is one where you have multiple rounds. In the first round, the party with the least number of first preference votes is eliminated, and then we look at every voter's preference list, and we take off that party and move the parties up the list into the space left by that one. So, for example, someone votes for the Labour Party as third, and they go out in the first round. Then whoever they had as fourth becomes their third vote, and then whoever they had as fifth becomes their fourth vote, and so on. So we move up into the gap. Then we do another round just the same, where we'll eliminate the first votes, the party which has the least number of first votes at that point, and then go through it again and again till there's only one party left. Instant runoff voting is explained online. I think there's a Wikipedia page for it if you didn't understand all that. So every month that will happen, and the party who wins that election will, if they're not already the government, they will become the government. That means they get the cabinet and the prime minister and all that stuff. They get to that would be exactly the same as we have now. And the prime minister would sit in 10 Downing Street, the same place they are, and we'd have the same, I believe this is 21 people in a cabinet. That person would choose a cabinet from members of his or her own party. Now, we won't have MPs though. We won't have members of this house in the way we have now. So I guess the cabinet can be just anybody in their party. Now, basically the one that has become the government will also have the greatest lawmaking power. So the way I would have it is that they would have 50% of the lawmaking power. So if there's an election, a decision to make on a new law, then 50% of the votes in that, I don't know how many votes there'll be, it doesn't really matter. Let's say they might be 1,000 or something. If there's 1,000 votes in these things, they get 500 of them. And then the other parties, the opposition parties, get to vote in these elections, these decisions, in proportion to the number of first votes they got. So that would be, there would be lots of opposition parties, and they would, as I said, they'd probably be quite split between a bunch of different parties. So that way, if the government wants to propose a new law, they'll have their 50% vote, which will hopefully go their way unless there's some sort of rebellions within their party. And then, because there's so many different opposition parties, they'll probably always get some sort of support from an opposition party for any proposal they put across. So what I thought of for to kind of simplify and save money is to have the current Houses of Parliament, turn that into a museum, and just because we wouldn't need all these over 1,000 members of Parliament, including the House of Lords, which we'd get rid of as well. They could that kind of stuff could happen in this building called Portcullis House, which is just across the road from Big Ben and all that. And that's where they have, I think they have some of their what do they call them? Select committees. They've got like a few committee rooms in there. So what I imagine happening is, if there is every day, there will be debates in Portcullis House, which we might rename Parliament House. There'll be debates in there, but a typical debate would, let's say, debates about just the kind of stuff that the executive branch is doing, the ministers are doing, like the Minister of Education, for example. Meetings of discussion about that would just be like 10 people around a table. So it'd be a chairperson who would be neutral. There'll be this minister or secretary of education, and then there'll be 8 opposition people from all the 8 most popular opposition parties, and they'll sit around a table and fire questions at this minister, I guess. When it comes to lawmaking, I imagine a similar thing. There could be a table with again the same kind of deal. There'd be a government representative, and then 8 representatives from the other most popular parties, and they would and a chairperson who's neutral, and they could have a debate about that. But at the end, they don't go and vote at the end of the debate necessarily. The votes will be online, as I said, and like remote, so they wouldn't have a party, I guess, wouldn't have to engage in this. But it just could be quite useful to thrash these things out and show the public, publicly show your positions and how they sort of contrast with the opposition people and so on. So one possible problem with this is, if I'm leaving it to parties to to do the votes, then it could be that one party is very authoritarian, has like one person who just holds or has all the voting power. But we could just have a law against that, where the ruling party has to, like, one person can't have more than 0.25% of the voting power. So that mimics this situation in Parliament now, where you have to have at least, I think it's 325 people casting votes for the government, which I guess is healthy. It spreads out the power amongst a moderately large number of people. Nothing like the population of the country, of course. So I think that's about it. Sorry. One problem, again, I thought of is to do with this thing where you don't have elections, and any month you can have a new government. It seems possible you could have it flipping and flopping. So a new government comes in, as soon as they come in, they start cocking up and people vote for another party. So it's literally, we've got a new government every month, which is not good. But I don't know if this problem will actually happen, because people will realize that happens. People will get sick of the flopping around, and at least one individual would get pretty sick of doing that, I think. I suppose in theory you could get a situation where the people flopping are always different people, so there's not like a given person changing votes every month, but collectively we are flipping and flopping. You could just have a law that says the new government gets a year before they can be booted out. So that it could be just solved by something like that. But I'm sort of vaguely hopeful that the people will have this sort of feeling that a new government needs to be given a chance, and you shouldn't just withdraw your vote really early on. Also, I think there is usually a bounce when a government gets into power of at least a month or two. So that would help in this matter too. Anyway, I hope you found that interesting. All the best.